Hello, everybody, and welcome to the React Native Show. Today, our topic is React Native Brownfield and everything related to it. Just before we start, if you want to stay up to date on everything as far as React Native goes, as well as be notified every time we publish a new release of this podcast, please make sure to follow us on our Twitter, Facebook, and other social media accounts. Everything is in the link of the podcast. And that way you will be always on the bleeding edge of everything React Native. So with that in mind, I guess we can start with our podcast today. As I said, the topic is React Native Brownfield. And today with me, there is a very special guest, Mike Hujak, that works with me at Callstack. Hello, Mike. It's nice to have you today.
Hi, Mike. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe let me start from a quick introduction of myself. I'm Michał, and I've been working as a head of delivery at Callstack. And except for manager stuff, I do some React Native and native mobile development. And I'm especially passionate about combining those two words in a way that we call a brownfield development. And I guess this is why I'm here today.
Yes. Well, yes. That is the primary reason, but also it's good to see you, as you said, because in this pandemic world, we are working remotely all the time. And even though the ones that are watching us can't tell it, Mike actually is sitting in the next room. So at least we had this opportunity to pass by ourselves on the, outside of these rooms. Anyway, I'm glad that you mentioned brownfield development, or combining these two worlds together, since, as you said, this is what we are going to be talking about today. It's definitely a really popular keyword and a really popular term in React Native itself. And now the big question is, what does it actually mean in practice, this brownfield development?
That's a very good question, I would say. So I think it has its roots in civil engineering, and brownfield term in this domain is characterized by working on a land that's already developed or under development. And it means that any new work has to consider structures that are already in place. And if we take this to software development, we can think of creating something on top of existing software. It offers a place to start with predetermined direction and allows us to reuse existing code and features. And this implies the need to understand existing systems and environment on which the application needs to be built. And of course, presence of existing legacy code might impact final costs, since dealing with it naturally might slow down whole development process, as you might need to refactor a portion of an existing app. And I think also the entry barrier is bigger than it would be if you would start from scratch. And in our nomenclature, brownfield applications in React Native, obviously, are the ones that are built on top of existing native applications. As React Native is relatively new technology and many applications were built either before it was published or before it was mature enough. And now I feel like everything's changed in this area, and React Native is one of the best, if not the best, choice for cross-platform development, especially in such environments, so brownfield environment.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. To be honest, I didn't know that brownfield had its roots in the civil engineering. That's something very interesting to learn about. Now, I guess if we would continue this analogy, that there is also a different term, which is called Greenfield development, that is also used in that area. And now, I guess before we go into the benefits and problems and challenges with Brownfield development in React Native, how about we just stop for a second and explore what Greenfield development means, just so that everybody is on the same page, let's say.
Sure. So Greenfield term describes a project that will be built on a green land. So it means that there is no existing buildings, no infrastructure, or nor anything that could impact the work. So taking this to software development, we can think of a Greenfield application as something that we build from the scratch in a fresh environment. And this gives us design flexibility, and we can set everything the way we want. And we have an opportunity to choose the most convenient tech stack. So basically, there are no dependencies on existing structure or anything that's already created. And of course, it's a double-edged sword, I would say. As system has to be built from the scratch, it can be quite time-consuming. Also, versatility of development options might impact the lack of clear understanding on what approach to take, which direction to follow. So in Brownfield, we have this predefined direction, and in Greenfield, we do not, which could be good, but could be bad on the other hand. So in React Native context, we can think of a Greenfield application as an app that is, as I said, built from the scratch. So you can either choose a React Native CLI or Expo, initialize your project, choose the tech stack you want, choose the tools you'd like to work with, and start whole development process.
Okay, cool. So that makes a lot of sense, and it looks like Greenfield development is essentially what most of us are doing on a daily basis. Either we use React Native CLI to init a new project, or we use Expo. That is a Greenfield project, because there is nothing that is sort of implying these requirements, which is present in the Brownfield otherwise. And this leads me to the other question, which is like what a Brownfield project would look like. Again, to get Greenfield project, we would use the CLI and just do React Native init, and that's easy. Like if I were to do Brownfield development, what project do I need to have, and how do I start it?
Yes. So as far as prerequisites, I feel like I think you need to have a app that you would like to extend with additional piece. So something that's already in place, and we would like to build on top of that. So that's only requirement, I'd say. And then you can simply start, for example, by following the official React Native documentation. There's a whole section describing the integration process. I think it's called like integrating with existing apps. Documentation itself is great and very well described. But the process itself is not that easy. Also, I think there is a lot of different materials over the internet that you could follow. For example, I think on our blog we have some nice guide on how to start with Brownfield development, and basically we walk you through the process step by step. But
it would be nice if it wasn't on our blog, right? Sorry for this little Callstack marketing. This is company podcast, so we had to do it.
Yeah, so basically, if you have an existing app, you can start to benefit from cross-platform approach right away without rewriting a whole application. And this is what we call gradual adoption. You can simply add a feature on top of existing code base, and this feature can be written in React Native, even if you have native apps.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has a heavy impact on development costs. And for me, it's one of the biggest advantages of this approach, since it allows you to reduce the development cost by a vast number, as you have only one team responsible for a feature development that works both on Android and iOS. Uh, but besides that, I think not only costs play an important role in this approach. A fact that you don't need to get rid of existing solution nor stop its development in order to migrate to a new technology, or basically start this migration process. It implies that your project can continue generating revenue and ship new features during the migration process, which I find very nice and beneficial.
Yeah,
Mm,
and that is really exciting, as you said, because you don't have to stop everything. You don't have to pull off the plug and start working on it. You can do this gradual adoption, which is really nice. And as I said, it sounds very exciting, yet challenging at the same time. It seems that you not only have to be really good in React Native, because this is a definitely a challenging and more of a advanced work, but also you have to have a relatively good knowledge of the native iOS and Android development, right? So, I guess the question I have is like, what kind of challenges would you say are there for the developers from your own experience?
yeah, so that's definitely true. And I think the biggest challenge is an entry barrier for such projects. And in order to accurately understand what's going on and make sure that everything's integrated properly, you have to not only know the JavaScript side and React Native internals, but also you need to have a very good understanding of React Native architecture, underlying internals, and the native side. Yeah, like this kind of knowledge is pretty wide, but it's more than welcome in such projects.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but it seems that it is not that easy to find or either get yourself both React Native and native knowledge. It's like
Yeah.
very time consuming to get proficient with both, and usually the ones that start React Native development do it because they don't really want to learn both Android and iOS. They just prefer to have a unified framework. Now, I guess we
Let
already
me
know. Yeah.
give you an example because I've done several brownfield integrations in the past, and starting from some simple integrations where we shipped new features to existing native apps to more advanced ones. And if I think of challenging projects that come to my mind, is the most recent one that I've worked on. And we'd been developing a React Native app, and it turned out that some native teams within the same organization would like to integrate some of our features directly to their app. And given this requirement, we've torn the app to separate modules and published them as NPM packages. And then on native projects, we proceed with regular brownfield integration. So we integrate React Native to their repos, to their apps, install those modules from NPM. And as they were multiple modules, we wanted to optimize its usage. So if one module instantiated a React Native bridge, and loaded JavaScript and all of the assets, we wanted to reuse this instance to optimize load time. And besides that, we had some challenges with maintaining two separate navigation stacks, native and JavaScript, and we had to combine it in a way that it would be unnoticeable for end users. So it wasn't very obvious and common use case, but it demonstrates well the need of understanding, as I said, React Native, its internals, architecture, native build systems, native UI development, and finally native languages.
That sounds like a lot of like different things that you need to know and that can possibly go wrong. So that's really impressive. And again, I was going to say that these challenges are nothing new for you, but you kind of already answered that and proved that to be a fact. Since you've worked in so many brownfield projects so far, you kind of seen it all, like all these things. Now, since we are here to talk about your library called React Native Brownfield, I just wanted to ask if that's how the idea for it came to your mind.
Yeah, actually, that was one thing that came to my mind, that the whole process is quite repetitive, and that we could extract some some pieces of this code to a open source library, and we could publish that in order to facilitate it for future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what React Native Brownfield can do for me? Will it save me from writing native code entirely?
Yes, but also native developers from writing JavaScript. So let me follow up to the same story that I've told you before. So this integration worked out very well from perspective of React Native developers, but we missed one very important thing, and the fact that we are not alone in this project, and this setup impacts the daily job of native teams. And we've noticed that it decreased productivity of native teams as they had to deal with new tools like Node.js, like Yarn, Metro Bundler. They observed changes within their own repository that they did not fully understand. And besides that, we've increased build time for an application, because as we had to build all the stuff related to React Native each time they run the app, which was very important for them. And hearing all this feedback made us realize that there is a lot of improve in a way that we collaborate with native teams. So on the one hand, we introduced some features to their app which bring a lot of business benefits, as the time needed to develop those functionalities natively on two different separate code bases would be like 10 maybe 12 times higher than in this setup. And on the other hand, productivity of these teams fell, which could have an enormous impact in the long run. So we start to think how to approach these challenges, and we came up with a solution to create an engine to package whole React Native environment, JS bundle, all the assets, native bindings, and everything to a single file. So that means end users had to deal with a .framework or an AAR file, depending on a platform, that they could easily integrate to their app. And they were able to consume exposed native classes as they would consume any other native UI library. So I can tell you that the results were amazing. And after creating a simple CLI, an engine in question, we've been able to plug it into the release process, and each time we published a release, a corresponding version of the modules was published to internal repositories. And native teams have been able to integrate it as they would integrate any other native library. So they don't have to deal with the React Native environment. Their build time was decreased to a number similar to what they had before starting the whole initiative, and everybody was fully owning their repositories and understanding their code base, which turned out to be a very, very nice thing, and cooperation was very smooth and fruitful.
Yeah, and that is, that is so amazing. I guess you may have not realized this, but you may have just finished the battle between native and JavaScript developers in so many companies right now as we speak that are trying to combine these two technologies together for the reasons that you said before. And being in few brownfield projects myself before, I can definitely relate to the fact that dealing with something that I don't fully understand, let's say seeing changes happening on the native side that I haven't authored and I haven't reviewed, would not really make me confident about what I'm building. So definitely a great use case for it. So it looks like just to sum it up, it looks like the big idea, the high level concept is that the React Native code is packaged in a way that native developers will not be able to tell whether it's React Native or full native code inside, which is great.
Yes.
And yeah, and my question is, what's inside such a package on both iOS and Android? Like, how does this?
Yes. So
work?
basically, the package is encapsulated into one file. So on iOS, it's a .framework file, or to be more specific, .xc framework, as we need to build separately for simulator and device and package it into one universal framework. And on Android, it's just a fat AAR file. So such file contains all React Native internal code required to run this module, a JavaScript bundle that includes all of our components and business logic, and then we have third-party native modules, and all required resources and assets needed to display the user interface. And besides that, we have native bindings that are exposed to end users. So basically, speaking from React Native Brownfield perspective, initially we came up with an idea of a few helpers that could facilitate the most common way of integration, React Native to existing apps. So as I've mentioned before, we started from focusing on people that integrate the whole React Native environment to their apps, as this was something that we have done at that time. And that was repetitive, and we wanted to, let's say, not to repeat ourselves later in the future. But then we come up with this new idea of how to set it up, and not only to focus on making React Native developers' life easier, but also to facilitate this setup for native teams. Yes, I've worked for a while in such teams, and now I feel that I know what's important for them. Hence the new setup and functionality that we just spoken about.
Yeah, so we'll get onto that later as well, because I really want to ask you about the features and what's coming up.
Sure.
I still got a few questions to kind of dig deeper into how it all works, and I guess everybody listening is so excited right now to learn about that as well. So the first question would be like, what happens with React Native and all its dependencies? You mentioned that that there is one file and the native developers can just use it, and that there is no overhead as far as the build time. So does the native client that is consuming such a package need to perform any additional actions, or just drag and drop it or something, and React Native is already there. Like, how's that one happening?
Yes, so in most cases, you can simply install this artifact with your preferred native package manager. And I've tested that with CocoaPods and Maven, and it works very well. However, it should work with any other package managers as well, as it doesn't differ from other native libraries that mobile teams use on daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides that, I think like you do not need to do any additional setup. Maybe if you have some dependencies within your project and within the package that potentially could collide, then some exclusions could be needed. But I think in 95% of projects, it shouldn't be a case.
Okay, cool. So that's really amazing. That's like bleeding, not bleeding, but I forgot the word, but it's fast. Whatever. There was a word starting with B for something fast, like not
Blazing.
I was going to say it, but I'm not sure if that's actually a word. So those
Okay.
that are native English speakers listening to us right now, please forgive us these kind of mistakes. Okay, so we know how it is packaged, and that is all amazing. So now I do have a like very little question about the components itself. Like, say I have a screen in React Native that I want to put inside that native application. So the native developer that would install this framework or APK on Android, would it get a API to reference this screen so that it can push it? Or how do the native developer could actually get the contents of the package?
Yes, so I've mentioned native bindings that are a part of this artifact. So basically, we expose some view controllers, fragments, could be even instance of UI view or Android.view that basically renders React Native screen within its bounds.
I
So
see.
yes, they can use same building blocks that they use on daily basis, which I think is very convenient.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense. So this is all very nicely aligned with your idea, which you said before, that thanks to React Native Brownfield, you can essentially send your React Native code to the native developers, and they can just use it as if you sent them native stuff. So that is amazing. So now jumping to the other side, to the JavaScript developers. Now, let's say I'm working on that screen that I already used as an example for the previous question, and I'm packaging that for with the React Native Brownfield library. So when it's done, I send it to the development team, right? So what would be the workflow here across both teams? You mentioned CocoaPods, Maven, so that's how I should think about setting this all up?
It's up to you, I would say. So you can send
Okay.
it any way you want. So in my opinion, the best solution would be to plug it into your continuous delivery process. And with React Native Brownfield, we'll provide you with a command line interface that lets you
Nice.
build an artifact with one command. And you can simply run that command on CI, on some release branch, for example, and publish an output to the most convenient place. And it could be either a GitHub release tab, CocoaPods repository, Maven repository, or Jetpack.
Cool.
So then native teams should be able to download a specific version of this library with their favorite package manager. And the best thing is that there are no restrictions in that area. So you can design this process any way you want and choose the most convenient approach for your team.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is really great because I can see, this library can be used in many different brownfield setups, and everybody can use it the way they want. Whether it's Maven, Kakapods, or any convenient CI/CD setup with Package Manager, or simply drag and dropping this to your documents folder, which, by the way, I'm not sure if it's the case today, but used to be the installation guide for Facebook SDK. So it's definitely one of the maybe not recommended patterns, but definitely it is something that native developers do from time to time. So NPM is not everywhere yet, everybody. Okay. So, so the last question regarding the workflow before we go to the project status and what's coming up, since like I'm working on that screen again, I'll be using this screen. Usually in a Greenfield project, I have my React Native init app. I work on a screen. I see this screen immediately. It refreshes, and I can see the progress real time. Now with the Brownfield, React Native Brownfield library, I'm not building the app, I'm building the framework. So the question is, how do I see my changes? How do I preview the changes before I actually execute this CLI command that you mentioned?
Sure. So our idea is that React Native Brownfield will provide you with a playground project. And you can run it as you would run a regular React Native application and work on your JavaScript code there. So I believe it's an optimal approach for this kind of development, as you can work independently from the native teams. However, in a rare, I would say, case where you would like to test out your module in the destination native app, and you would like to avoid rebuilding the artifact each time you do a change, we'll provide you with an option to build a debug version of the artifact that does not contain JS bundle and assets, but rather fetches it from Packager. So you simply start it in your project, Packager, you start it in your project, and then if you integrated a debug version of the artifact, you can preview the changes live in the destination app.
Oh, awesome. So if I'm brave enough to go to the native application, open it up, I can integrate the debug version of the framework. And essentially, at that point, it would look like building a traditional brownfield project, because I would see the changes. I would have Metro running somewhere from a different project, of course, but this would be sort of a nice way to iterate on that.
Yes. However, as I said, I feel like working independently is the most optimal setup here. So I believe in most cases you should be able just to rely on a playground app that we provide.
Yeah. I was gonna say that this sounds like this is very similar to, for example, RN Tester, which is the playground app for built-in React Native components. So I'm definitely on board with that approach. It's a good way to test it. Okay, so I guess everybody's having this question right now. What's the current status, and when can I use this amazing tool?
So the library is currently under development, and there's a legacy version available on GitHub, but it does not contain the features described in question. But please stay tuned, as we are quite advanced in the development process, and given our experience with this setup in commercial projects, I can say that the first release with the complete list of features is going to be released soon.
Nice. That's really great stuff. And working with Mike at Callstack, I can sort of assure you that this is not a pre-made answer. This is actually, I don't know the status of the project. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask this question. That would be stupid. But I was just asking about the details. I know they are working on it, but I'm not sure about the status. Hence the question. All right. So, you mentioned that currently on GitHub, there is a legacy version of React Native Brownfield that doesn't have the features we are discussing. So in case you go to GitHub, pay attention to what you're interacting with, because the current version is slightly different. You can still start the repo just so that and watch it, of course, so you see when the guys are done with it. Anyway, the V1 is there, the legacy one. You're working on V2 right now, which is going to be everything amazing that we are talking right now. It is essentially just extracting the code from the projects that you've done for the clients and making that open sourced. So it seems to me that it's already sort of production ready. Now the big question is, is there anything coming up to your mind as far as the features in the future? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're not gonna stop right where you are right now, because since this is all based on your challenges in brownfield projects, maybe you had some other things that you'd like to solve and figure within the React Native Brownfield library. So tell us a bit more about future plans. What can we expect when the V2 is released?
Sure. So just to clarify, we aren't exactly extracting the code that we have built for one of our commercial projects, as the setup here was a bit different. Although we've taken all of our expertise and put it into this library, which conceptually is based on the same foundation, let's say. And speaking of features, I think I can give you a sneak peek. So the first major feature is a project generator that I've mentioned before. So it will generate new project that could be easily packaged to a single file. And besides that functionality, the project will contain a playground, which you can use to develop React Native code. And what's more in terms of features, we would like to create a code gen that translates TypeScript or Flow types to native languages. So this will ensure the type safety between JavaScript and native layers. And yeah, we are still debating on how to approach the integration with existing React Native projects. So generally, we would like it to be universal, and we would like it to be used in a way that you could just plug it into existing React Native app and use it as separate module. Yeah, and besides that, I think we have some more. Yeah, we would like to integrate over-the-air updates as well. So this should facilitate, let's say, updating new features, newly developed code without going through a whole release process. And besides that, we want to create a dedicated React navigator. So the integration here in terms of navigation will be smooth and easy.
Cool. So, like after one planned feature, I was already sold, and you gave me 4 of them, if I counted right. So that's really amazing. I'm really, excited and looking forward to see them, because, looks like you are working on nailing out the integration pieces with the project generator, and the types are amazing feature as well, especially to me, because many times when we exposed something between JS and React Native, JS and Native, there was always this type mismatch issue that somebody used an NS dictionary on iOS which didn't have types, and it was not matching the types on the JavaScript side. This is actually one of the reasons why code gen in React Native actually is happening. And so, this is really exciting, because then you will have type safety between your React Native components and screens and the native ones. So super amazing. I really wish you luck with this, and I can't wait for the release. And with this in mind, I wanted to say that it's been a really great time today with you, having this conversation about native development. And it's funny that we are like, this is a React Native podcast, so we should be talking about JavaScript all the time, one would say. And it's yet another episode around native technologies. So I think this kind of proves the point from the beginning of our conversations, that these two worlds are very close to each other. And if you are doing React Native, at the end of the day, you might need to do a bit of native, unless there is somebody like you and your team that provides a nice abstraction. So thank you for joining the podcast. Again, I wish you best of luck with your development. And now you can tell me, how did you enjoy it? And yeah, basically it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So it was a pleasure talking to you. And for all the people interested in React Native Brownfield, please stay tuned for upcoming updates, and make sure to check out our GitHub, our blog, and our social media.
Yeah. And again, actually, fun fact that I just realized, Mike, this is one of these rare occasions when we get to speak to each other in English, right? So, it's quite a interesting observation. Anyway, thank you, Mike, again for joining. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us, watching us, or reading us. Whatever is the way you are interacting with us, because we are everywhere. And if there is any platform that we are not there yet and you'd like us to be there, let us know. So thank you again for joining. Make sure to subscribe to our social media account on Twitter, Facebook. Go check out the React Native Brownfield Library on GitHub. And most importantly, stay tuned for the next episode of React Native Show, which is going to reveal some interesting features. It's going to be yet another library, but this time for building really, really complex React Native apps. So it's going to be amazing. Stay tuned. Thank you.
See ya.